Hello, I'm Reed Graff, the student code for Team 17682, TimberX, out of Woodbury Forest, Virginia, at Woodbury Forest School. So today here I'm going to talk to you all about laser cutting, how we design laser cut parts, and how we actually use a laser cutter that we have to cut the parts out that we made. So here's an example of a design we made that we ended up laser cutting, as you can see right here. And the purpose of the design was actually to sit on our French cleat wall, which is kind of how we organize our parts. As you can see, a little bit, it's not fully finished, but it's over on that side. But the point of this was that we were going to have a dowel sitting right here, and then another one right here, sticking out, and then we're going to hang our hammers and mallets on this part. So let's get into how we actually design that. So for our team, how we have our repository organized on Fusion 360, over here on our left side, we have machines and tools, part repository, robots, and practice. If we go into machines and tools, the wall organizer, and then we're now on version 2, so we go open version 2. We have this cleat here, the profile for our cleat. And as you can see, this is actually the full length and exact profile of the cleats we actually have, so we can use this to design the cleats that we want accordingly, so or like the designs for the cleat accordingly. So as you see, we already have this example profile, but in order to actually use it, what we can go ahead and do is make a new folder. So for this video, I think what we're going to do is just going to make an example sign. So example sign. Awesome. All right, cool. And then let's make a new file. Let's just call it sign. Oh, let's rename it. Or here, let's save it. Let's call it sign. All right, awesome. And let's go back to version 2, and let's drag and drop this cleat file into here. Great. I can go ahead and close that. All right. So now we can go ahead and click OK. It seems like it's in a decent spot. We're gonna break the link. I'm gonna just go ahead and drag the sketch up into the file, and I'm just gonna hide this for the time being. So awesome. All right. So now we have this sketch here, and now we can edit it to make the sign that we want. So in order to begin, of course, anything we laser cut has to be a sheet. We can't really do 3D models the same way we do a regular 3D printer, right? We're not slicing it or anything like that. But we already kind of have the starter template right here. As you can see, we have this line. We filled it in, and then might as well, right? Let's go ahead and expand this, and let's see what that looks like. 3 millimeters is the size of our block. Oh, let's not actually join. Let's just make a new body. Right, so that's actually how our cleat is working right now. We have this little part that we could laser cut out, and it's going to sit on top of the cleat. So that's actually how it works. So let's go ahead and change this part to where it can actually hold a sign up. All right, so let's go back up here into the sketch. Let's edit that. And let's change this. We can make this back into a construction line. In terms of how we want to design this, there's a lot of different ways we could do this. Let's do 15 out. Seems good. Same down here, 15 millimeters. All right, we can change this to a construction line. And I think what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have this part and then another part further down the cleat, and then it's gonna be connected by a big slab, which is how we're actually gonna have the text that we want. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's offset this. Usually I wanna have everything in within 5 millimeters. 5 millimeters away from the edges, just to give it a little bit more support than it would have otherwise. And that's actually not extended all the way. Let's do that. All right, let's do this and this, and let's offset it by -5. All right, great. Actually, let's do 8 here. -8, I think. Is that the right distance? Maybe -6 or -7. I want the distance between these two lines being 3. Awesome, which is what we have now. So let's go ahead and make these not construction lines. And now we actually have to define the parts of this line that we want to be the slits for the different sheets that actually fit into it, which sounds a little confusing now, but it's gonna make more sense here in a second. All right, so let's do this. Let's offset this. Let's go, I don't know, let's go 8 millimeters up. Or let's go 5 first. How do you want to do this? Now let's just go, let's Let's go 5, why not? 5 millimeters up. All right, we can trim both these sides if we want to. Might as well. All right, and then we're gonna make this a non-construction line. Awesome. All right, and then we're gonna offset this again one more time, but instead of 5, let's go 15. And then we can trim. Oop, that was a mistake. Here. So let me go back into editing the sketch. All right. So now let's make this back into a construction line. Awesome. All right, let's do the same thing on the other side. Except first, let's trim this, because we don't need those. All right, let's do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to offset by 5 millimeters, or in this case, negative 5 millimeters. And then another one, we're going to offset negative 15. Great. And then we're going to trim, and trim. Awesome. That looks pretty good. For the time being, we can go ahead and finish the sketch and then look at how this is actually going to look. So when we go to this extrusion here, instead of extruding everything, we're going to extrude everything except these 2 little slots, right? So now this is what our body looks like. Okay, and then effectively what we're going to be doing later on is we're just going to be copying this cleat, or rather, just this body. And we're going to basically copy it and move it over, and then we're going to have the sign going in between them. But before we do that, let's actually make it a little bit more rigid, because I'm afraid if we just have this, it's going to like fold very easily. So let's add another part over here to prevent it from folding, like how I just explained. So let's go back into the sketch. All right. Let's go ahead and offset this line now. Let's go by 5 or so, negative 5. Awesome. So maybe I shouldn't have erased that line earlier, but oh well. And then we're going to offset. Oh, we can't offset that. I'm wrong. So let's do 8 and negative 8 again. Awesome. Okay. So now let's offset this if we can. Can't offset that. Okay. So we're going to offset this, and not 8, but 11. And then we're going to trim this a little bit. And trim again. You don't have to do this. It's kind of just nice to be able to do that. Just makes it easier on the eyes for the most part. And then we can offset this line. And let's just go. Let's go 5 out. Why not? These are all pretty arbitrary. You can change them however you'd like. In terms of the lengths and distances. In terms of the width of this, this always has to be the width of your material, or the thickness of it rather, because otherwise it wouldn't fit in. It would just, you'd have to shave it down or something to that effect. So let's go ahead and finish this. Let's edit our extrusion to where we now, it was hidden. All right, there we go. So now redo all of this. Maybe this is how we had it. Something like that. Awesome. Yeah, let's do that. Let's actually change this because that looks a little thin. So let's make it a little bit thicker. Let's edit this sketch. Let's just make this that should be good enough. Let's edit this extrusion like that. Awesome. Okay. Perfect. New body. Sounds good. We can go ahead and make this into a component. We don't have to, but it's just going to be easier long term. Alright, so let's go ahead and hide this cleat because we don't really need it right now. And same with the sketch. Alright, so let's take this component and copy it. Create copy. We're going to drag it out. And if we want the distance between this face and this face to be 100 millimeters, we're going to actually have to change that to 103 because the thickness of the material is 3. But let's say instead of 103 millimeters, let's say we want the middle to be, I don't know. Let's see, it has 300. How does 300 look? 303. That looks good. That gives us a lot of room to make a sign. So I think I like that. Let's click OK. Awesome. So now we actually have to define the parts in between these to actually hold it together. So let's unhide this sketch. And let's go here. Let's add all these together. Alright, let's start here. Like this object. And this is going to look a little goofy right now, but don't worry, it'll get better here in a minute. Alright, and then we're going to click new, yeah, let's just click new bodies for these. Awesome, okay. So that's not exactly what we're looking for, but here we're going to fix it up in just a second. So let's go back and do another extrusion. We're actually going to have to do one more extrusion after this as well, because otherwise it's going to join these together, which is not what we want. So let's hide that one, alright. So right now we're just going to be extruding this part. So let's do that. In order to do this, we have to start at this face and extend type to this face. Right, and we want it to be joined, but we don't want to join all these parts together, so we have to hide these components. Alright, perfect. Oh, I thought perfect. One second. Something... let's go back. So I actually did this incorrectly. So instead of choosing the start object as this face, we actually could just change it as the profile plane. And instead of the extend type being this face, we could change it to the other side, to this side. Here we are. Okay. Awesome. And now, once we hide these components, we actually see that lip, which is kind of what we wanted, because that lip is going to fit into the block, as you see it's doing right now. And same on the side, as you can see. Awesome. Okay. Cool, so now we have to do one more extrusion. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's unhide this, and we can hide these for the time being. We want to extend that side, and this side. Alright, and now we're going to unhide these. We're going to start on this object right here and extend to this object. Awesome, and then we're going to hide these to prevent them from joining. So now if we hide that, and let's go ahead. There's a mistake. We gotta hide one of these. There we go. Let's hide that. Alright, now we have these two different parts. Awesome, and this is where we're actually gonna put our sign. So let's go ahead and look at what we have right now. So this is what we have. So we have this one part, right? So let's see. We have these two sides, right? And then we have these two bodies in between these two components, right? Which is gonna hold everything together. And then it's just kind of just sitting on this cleat, which is what we're looking for. Awesome. So let's hide this cleat again. And now in order to make our sign, what we're actually going to do is we're going to actually cut out of this plate right here in order to design what we want to have on this design. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a new sketch. Click this face. In order to find the middle, let's go ahead and just draw a line from the top left to the top right. Awesome. So now we know the middle is going to be, if we wanted to, we can go ahead and find a point there too. As you can see right there, right at that triangle. And we have that midpoint constraint. Alright, so what do we actually want to put on this? I'm just going to do something pretty simple. Let's do, what am I saying? Text. There we are. Let's assign it way up here. Let's just say TimberX. Here, let's say, just because I'm so egotistical, cleat wall. Which sounds a little funny, but let's ignore that fact. What text we got? Yeah, we can keep it on Arial, why not? Let's make it bold, because why not? Awesome. Okay, that seems pretty good. Yeah, let's just say legacy. This is kind of what I'm leaving behind. Perfect. Alright, and then same thing, we want to find the center of this. So let's go ahead and do that. Point. And then we want to move this, so let's do point to point. Let's select this origin point, and then let's say target point as right here. So now we know it's in the very center of this. We're just going to click OK. And then we can click this and say explode text. Awesome. So now that's Regress Legacy is now on this sketch right here, which is great. Awesome. Something we might want to do is actually make this not a construction line or construction points, because otherwise we're not going to be able to extrude it. So there we go. Now we can actually select the faces and extrude them when we want to. But what else can we add? Let's add something over in these sides, because why not? So let's just draw a center line down the middle of this. Awesome. And then once again, let's find the center of it. Center of these two little sections. And I don't know, let's just do, I don't know, what should we do? Let's just do a circle, why not? 30. How's 45 look? Alright, 55. Why not? I don't know what I'm really going for here, to be honest. This is kind of just for an example. And then same thing on this side. Let's do center point rectangle. 55. 55 by 55. Alright, perfect. Select these sides. Let's make it not a construction line. Alright, so now we can extrude these as well. Same with the text if we really wanted to. I don't really know why I made those, but that's beyond the point. Actually, let's go back. Let's actually make it like T and X on the side, because that's going to look cooler, I think. And you can go ahead and skip through this part if you don't want to see this, because it's just kind of the same thing as what we've just been doing. But let's make it 50, why not? Alright, perfect. And then let's do that again. So right click and go repeat text. And awesome. Alright, and then let's do a line through the middle. Same thing, find the center point. We're just going to do point to point. So point, let's throw a point right here. Point right there. Point right here, and a point right here. Awesome. So let's go ahead and drag up. I didn't want to do that. Alright. Say move, copy. Let's do point to point. Let's click this. And let's target point. Oh, no selection. Here we are. Alright, our origin point right here. And target point all the way down here. Awesome, that looks good size-wise. Alright, great. Let's do it one more time. Point to point. We're going to get the origin point and the target point. Great, alright, that seems pretty good. Cool, and then let's just explode these. I guess we gotta explode them one at a time. Alright, explode text. Explode text. There we are, and you can double click and it should click everything that's connected to that line. Perfect. Great. So let's finish sketch. And now, oh, it disappeared. Here we are. And so now let's go ahead and extrude these parts. It's a little meticulous to go and select all these lines, but I think it's going to be worth it. Here we are. Perfect. Extend type to object, and we're going to click this side. It's going to lag out my computer a bit. Objects to cut, just that body. Alright. Great, so now there's our sign. But notice there is one issue. Notice how this part of the R and the E and other parts of this text is actually floating. So that's not going to really work for the laser cutter. If we do it, this little part's just going to fall out. It's just going to disappear somewhere in the depths of the laser cutter sides. So if we actually want that to be there, we kind of have to draw a little bar between it in order to have it stay in place. So let's go back into our sketch and change that, just so where we can actually have all this come out. And once again, I'm just doing this pretty arbitrarily. Perfect, right there. Same thing on the other side. Let's do this. We're going to have to do this on all the different parts of the text. Yeah, there's actually maybe a font that does this for you, which would be pretty nice. I personally just don't really care enough for that, but let's do this. It's going to be perfectly 90 degrees. Once again, this is all just pretty arbitrary in terms of how we're doing it. We're going to go ahead and go through, and you can skip through this part again, or we can speed it up. Depends on what Leo wants to do. But same kind of thing, I'm just going to be going through this, making sure that all these letters are going to be secured in place. Let's do it on the top side as well. because we want to make sure this thing is extra sturdy. Alright, it doesn't have to be perfect on the same side. In fact, let's just make it not perfect. It doesn't have to be. We're not really chasing perfection in this. This is more so just for an example's sake. It'll probably still be here by the time whoever's watching this is looking at it, but it wasn't necessarily supposed to. We can make it more perfect if we wanted to, but I'm not all that OCD right now. There's the bell. I should be doing homework, but irrelevant. Alright. Here we are. And once again, let's just not make it perfect. I'm sorry for anyone who's very OCD watching this. Let's do the G. Alright, I think that looks good enough for the most part. I think that's just about everything, every single island we had. It's supported now. Awesome. Alright, cool, so we can finish sketch. Now all I have to do is go back into the extrusion and just add the little parts of it that we didn't have previously. So we can add this part. It's going to lag out my computer a bit. We can add these parts. This, and this, and that, and that, and that. And of course, gotta go all the way through this, fill everything, just so that we have the islands. And of course, another thing you could do if you didn't want to have islands, you could literally just engrave into it instead of cutting it all the way through. But I don't know, I think cutting all the way through is pretty cool, so we're gonna go ahead and do that instead. But anyway, here we are, with the G. Alright, I think that's everything. Let's make sure, as you click OK. Are there any more islands? It looks like all the islands are now blocked up, so that looks good. I don't know what error we got here. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and save this. I think that's what it's upset with us about right now. Alright, perfect. That went away. Alright, so cool. That looks good. Good enough. Of course, you can make this look better if you're a little bit more OCD about it, but once again, this is just for example's sake, so no reason to get too worried about how it looks, but I think it's good enough to go ahead and make this into a DXF file and send it off to our laser cutter. So let's get into that now. So in order to actually make this into a file we can cut, first we need to lay all of these different parts on one layer, and then we're going to kind of export that layer to the laser cutter effectively. So let's go ahead and getting into that. So let's get into this folder. Alright, let's open up a new design. Let's save it here. We're going to call it DXF. It's in the right folder, just make sure that's correct. We're going to save it, and we're going to drag this file we just made into this new file. Alright, cool. Let's click OK. Let's break the link. Awesome. Alright, cool. So now what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to click S in order to search, or search for shortcuts. We're going to say offset plane. You don't really have to do this, but I find it easier, and it's easier to change later on instead of doing it directly to the origin. So let's click OK. Yeah, you don't need to offset it by anything. Just click offset and just click the plane. So now it's going to stick there. Awesome. So now we need to align all these parts that fit to that plane. So we're going to do S, search up align. Awesome. And then components. And we're going to select this, and we're going to select here. Cool. So you see how I just kind of laid down flat like that? We're going to do the same thing. We just keep selecting on this. We're going to select this. We're going to select here. And you just want to get them all on the same plane. So you see that one's a little bit off. So in order to make it correct, you're going to select this. Wow, my computer is really struggling right now. Alright, so you see now they're on the same plane, so that works good. And we click capture position, alright? And now we have to do the same thing with all the bodies we have. So change object type to bodies, we're going to select that. I'm going to select the top of this plane, and the same thing, I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select this plane here as well. That puts it on the bottom, but no worries, we can just click this, and then send it back to this. And let's make sure that's, as you can see, that's everything on one plane now. Alright, so we can click OK. Awesome, so now what we want to do is move them around. Move them around so that they're not interlapping, or intersecting rather. Interlapping, overlapping. So let's just drag this one out a little bit. Okay, perfect. Same thing here. Here, let's just repeat move copy. And I know there's a shortcut for that too, I'm just lazy. Of course, that doesn't make sense, regardless. Alright, that looks good. Let's move this. And I try and get this as close as possible earlier on, as opposed to in the actual slicer for the laser cutter. It just makes it a little bit easier later on, because it's easier to move it around in Fusion than the slicing software. At least personally, that's how I perceive it. It's just also just kind of nice. Makes it look nice. Alright, cool. Capture position, and okay. And that's everything. Of course, it's it looks right from the bottom side, but nonetheless, that's everything laid out on one plane. So awesome. So now all you have to do is click Create a Sketch. You can just click that same plane that we were aligning everything to, and click everything. Right, it doesn't matter if it's going to be upside down because it's a sheet. All you have to do is just flip it right side up. All right. So now let's go ahead and project these. So we're going to click OK. Let's go ahead and just name that sketch DXF, just to make it all tidy. Awesome. So now I have to click this. Now all I have to do is click this, right click, and say save as DXF. We can just save that to our downloads file, and let's just say TX. Why not? Alright, and then just gonna save this file. You can actually even hide all of this and save it. Awesome, so that completes everything that we have to do in Fusion 360. And now everything from here, we're just gonna go in the slicing software for Xcreate. So we're gonna close, and then let's go ahead and open Creative Software, let's see, Xtool Creative Space is the name of it, because we're using the Xtool laser cutter. But once again, this would be a very similar process if you're using other brand laser cutters, or like water jet cutters, anything to that effect, plasma cutters. Awesome. So now what we can do is open our File Explorer folder, go to Downloads or wherever you save your DXF file, and you're just going to drag and drop it in. So now I tend to just move it in the middle just because it's a little bit easier. And then you just set all the parameters you want. So for our machine, when it comes to cutting this this 3mm medium board from, well, I don't know if it was, I think it was Lowe's, I think. It was just the cheapest particle board they had. It was just like compressed paper, effectively, just really dense cardboard. We cut at 98% power at 5mm per second, and that tends to cut through it in one pass very cleanly at the PSI that we're at, and with the baseboard we have. Of course, that would change if you had higher PSI, etc. But yeah, right, those settings look pretty good, right? And then we want to make sure this output switch is on, because otherwise it wouldn't cut it. So awesome, that all looks great. So I'm not actually going to click process because I'm not connected to the computer, to the laser cutter right now, because what we do is we actually save this file to a USB drive and transport it to the computer that's permanently hooked up to our laser cutter. That way I can still work on my computer while the part is being cut. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's click File, Save As. Let's click USB drive. Let's click, let's name it example sign, right? And let's click Save. Awesome, just make sure I save that again. Awesome, and that's it. And I'll go ahead and see you at the laser cutter.
Thank you.